You know, for most people, when they try to think of their favourite film from the last 35 years or so, set in space, starring iconic characters with pretty catchy one-liners with awesomely designed sets of monsters, they would probably go straight to Star Wars, and understandably so. I mean, Star Wars is like the biggest thing ever nowadays. I mean, you name it, there's probably Star Wars merchandise of it. Star Wars cereal, Star Wars lamps, Star Wars toilet seat cover. But me, I've never really been a part of the Star Wars crowd. I mean, I've only ever seen episode 4, so I can't really call myself the biggest fan, even though I do really like episode 4. It's pretty good. I might watch the others today, actually. I mean, who knows? I'm getting off topic. Anyway, instead, my love for 80s space movies lies in the Aliens franchise. One of the things I really love about the Aliens franchise is just how different in tone every film is. Ridley Scott's 1979 Alien was more of a thriller, which made sense for the first film as nobody had any idea what a xenomorph was at the time. It was tense, stylish, and in my opinion, some of the special effects still hold up today. A shining example that practical effects storm CGI every time. James Cameron's 1986 sequel Aliens remains to be one of my favourite films of all time, as I could watch it a million times without getting bored. It's funny, sad, kick-ass, heartfelt, scary, and Sigourney Weaver managed to prove that women could sometimes be more badass than the men. After that, Alien 3 went for a more crap tone, Alien 4 went in a more awful direction, and since then the Alien franchise has just been butchered beyond recognition. And it's really weird to see a franchise start so well but then just go so downhill. But then again, maybe that's just how it goes for space movies. Then again, J.J. Abrams has managed to bring back Star Trek, and maybe soon Star Wars. Maybe he could bring back Aliens next? Oh, he could adapt my script for Alien 5! But as far as this Alien fan's concerned, the only films in the franchise to exist are the first 2, because I want to do everything I can just to ignore the existence of the others. Which is actually kind of convenient, because that seems to be the same mindset in the game that we're going into today. Yeah, there is actually a game in all this, past all the film speak. We all get into a game eventually. Aliens Colonial Marines. This game has kind of been my Duke Nukem forever, as I've been looking forward to this game since it was in development for the PS2. Yeah, it's been that long. And weirdly enough, it's made by the same people who made Duke Nukem Forever too. This game really looked like it was going to take Aliens back to its roots, back to a time when it could actually be taken seriously. Anyway, let's waste no more time, because God knows we've already wasted enough. This video is like 3 minutes already. Let's get into Aliens Colonial Marines. Oh man, this game is gonna be good.
I hope you're right. I really do.
Oh yeah, that reminds me. I'll be using every opportunity I can get to put a clip from the film in this, so yeah, expect a few clips. Anyway, let's get into this. Right off the bat, it becomes clear that you need to have seen Aliens to play this game, or at least get the full experience. I know this because the game doesn't really take much time at all in explaining the events up to this point, for better or worse. Not only that, but the game never stops referencing aliens, like the game can't stand on its own merit and needs to leech off the popularity of the films. Then again, I do like Easter eggs, and some of them in the game are pretty cool to find. But just because the game repeats all the catchphrases from the film, doesn't mean it doesn't try to coin some of its own.
Attention, chicks and dicks!
I'll shit in my breakfast.
Well, I'll be a kangaroo's asshole.
Oh god, chicks and dicks, really. James Cameron would never write that in his film. Oh man, if you knew about this, he'd be so disappointed. You don't want James Cameron to think that you're badly written, do you? In Aliens, he plays Nathan Drake, one of the many soldiers of the Colonial Marines, exploring the USS Sulaco in LV-426, 17 weeks after the events of Aliens. And that's about as far as I can get, because I don't know the story, the game doesn't know the story, and Wikipedia doesn't know the story. So, nah, I got nothing. I think there is a story in there somewhere deep down, but I never really cared much about it, and I don't think the developers did either. There are other characters that try to keep the quote-unquote plot moving, but the character development on them is about as complex as the xenomorphs. I just call them Sergeant Angry.
So I don't want to hear any bitching because we let you lugheads sleep in late.
Not quite Ellen Ripley.
As the ranking officer, I have to make the call.
Sassy black woman who don't need no man.
Sort out your false positives, damn.
And my personal favourite, Guilty Face. And yes, he really does have that face throughout the entire game. Gameplay wise, Aliens Colonial Marines is... is... it's generic. It's repetitive, awful, generic. I am so disappointed in this game that it hurts deep down. And I mean, sure, this game couldn't have possibly lived up to all the years of hype and anticipation, but I mean, it isn't even good. Remember back in my Duke Nukem Forever review where I basically said all the disappointed people just need to lighten up? Yeah, well, I take all of that back. Completely. Because I had no idea what it felt like to be let down by a video game back then. And now, Gearbox has disappointed a new generation of anticipators, and I now know how it feels.
Let's get into why it sucks.
Okay, let's start off with the most important thing. The Xenomorphs. The Xenomorphs are what really set Colonial Marines apart from all other games, because without them, it's just a standard first-person shooter. And with that in mind, you really notice that for the chunks of the game where you're shooting at people, and there's no aliens in sight. And it's just like, why am I shooting at people in an aliens game? No one bought this game to shoot at people, they wanted to shoot at Xenomorphs. So where the hell are the Xenomorphs? And as for the Xenomorphs themselves, here's just a little hint of how they're shown in this game. Ripley has reoccurring nightmares of them after having a close encounter. They managed to outlast multiple motion sensor turrets. It takes guns like this to stand a chance against a single one of them in the movie. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that they're not exactly the unstoppable force that they were in Aliens.
Game over, man. Game over.
And speaking of which, they're just not scary. Hell, I didn't even know this game was supposed to be a horror until I looked it up for this review. By the way, here's a tip if you're a game designer. If you make a horror game and one of your players is shocked to find that it's supposed to be a horror game, you're doing something wrong. Not only is there no tension built up whatsoever throughout the entire game, when the Xenomorphs run at you, they just look awful. I mean, really, look at this. Does that scare you? Does that strike fear in the very core of your soul? No, it looks stupid. It almost looks adorable, and that isn't something you should be able to say. The word adorable is not something that you should be able to describe the driving force of your horror game. Yeah, and then this happens. It just becomes ridiculous. I'm out of this. You can finish this review on your own. I'm leaving. The closest the Xenomorphs ever get to being scary is a certain chapter in the game in which your weapons are taken from you.
What the hell are we supposed to use, man? Harsh language?
When you have to sneak down long corridors, past sleeping and patrolling Xenomorphs. Now this might sound vaguely like another horror game, I can't put my finger— oh yeah, it's Amnesia. It's bloody Amnesia. Except for Amnesia built up tension using lighting effects and amazing score and relied on fear of the unknown, the Xenomorphs just walk around like this. Oh my god, that's awful. Honestly, that's not scary, game. That isn't scary. By the way, Amnesia, £10, indie company, revolutionised this kind of horror. Aliens Colonial Marines, £40, high-end studio, tried to copy it, failed miserably. There's something wrong with all of this. But good news though, if this little slice of generous fan service doesn't quite whet your appetite, there's also an obligatory online mode, because hey, it's a first-person shooter, so why not? And it's not good. Are you surprised? Moving on. Pretty much all of my problems with Aliens Colonial Marines can be summed up with, it's nothing. There's no tension, the Xenomorphs barely resemble Xenomorphs, there's no atmosphere, it's just generic, which technically isn't bad, it just makes it solidly average, but for a game that looked so goddamn good. And I mean, some of the scenery from the original film is nice to see, and the Easter eggs are a nice nod, which I admit are pretty cool. But we all know by this point that a game cannot be good by riding on nostalgia alone. Take the Aliens franchise away from this game and what is it? It's the very core essentials of an FPS game wearing the skin of aliens. Having a motion tracker is cool. Being on board the Sulaco is cool. Shooting Xenomorphs is cool. But these are all novelties, and you have to make them work well to make a game fun, whereas instead, Colonial Marines just unloads them all into a blender and out came this. And as a result, all of these things get boring after 5 minutes, which unfortunately is not ideal for a 6-hour campaign. And that's unfortunately Aliens Colonial Marines, and the most depressing thing about all this is it! This is our canonical video game sequel to Aliens. It's part of the timeline, we can't ignore it. I mean, they could try and make a sequel in the future to redeem it, but no one would buy it, it's the sequel to this. It doesn't matter if it's called Aliens Colonial Marines 2, Revenge of the Xenobabies from Space. People will see the Aliens Colonial Marines part and think, oh, I don't want that, it's the sequel to that awful game. And it will do just as bad financially and they won't put any effort into making it. It doesn't matter. And they could try and make some DLC for this to make it a little bit better, that they won't spend years developing, because that's the thing. This game sucks because they spent years and years developing it. I mean, I thought Gearbox learned before, if you spend years developing a game, it'll just turn out crap, because it's got PS2 graphics on it, PS3 graphics on it, outdated. It's just outdated everything. So if you're hoping for another attempt at a video game canonical sequel to Aliens, you're gonna have to wait for everybody to forget this game's existence first. And trust me, everybody is in a rush to. But judging by how long this game's been in development and how long we've all been hyping it up and looking forward to it, that's probably going to take a couple of years at least. But how do we make sure that everybody forgets about this game? I mean, as soon as possible, just to keep the Alien franchise, you know, not a complete laughingstock. Maybe they could bury it in the desert. Hell, would it be the first Alien-themed game to have done that? What do you think, Ripley?
I say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
Not a bad idea, Ripley. Not a bad idea. Farfetched Reviews will return after these messages. Actually, it won't, it's the end of the video, but just... Hey kid, yeah? Do you like games? Yeah. Do you like video game news? Yeah. Do you like discussing all the weird and interesting things going on in the gaming industry? Well, actually not really. But... Then you'll love Because Video Games. Because Video Games is a pretty great channel run by my friend Jake, who talks about whatever catches his interest in the gaming world, whether it be awesome, crappy, or just plain weird. Sometimes he talks about rumours, sometimes controversy, sometimes new trailers, whatever. And I feel like he always does a really great job of getting a discussion going in the comments, as he responds to almost everybody and really takes everyone's opinion into account. And obviously that's what the comment section's for, but I feel like he does a really good job of getting people talking, asking good questions. It makes me almost feel like I have a real friend. But I don't. And even though he's doing a lot better than I am, he still deserves a lot more subs than he's got. So it'd be great if you could give him a chance. Why? Well, because video games. Want to keep up to date with all the latest Farfetched news? Maybe you want to see some behind the scenes stuff, or just ask me a question. Either way, hit me up on my Facebook page in the description and give me a little old like. Here's some annotations on the left to some of my other stuff, plus the annotation on the right will help you in subscribing to my channel. By the way, only subscribe if, and only if, you think I am worth your subscription. I like to earn every last one of my subscribers, so make sure you think, am I really good enough for you? Is there a space in your heart for Farfetched Reviews? This is getting kind of weird. Anyway, I'm gonna go play the demo for Colonial Marines. No kidding, it's actually a lot more impressive than the final game. I don't know what the hell happened there. Anyway, see you next time.